The aftermath. As they dragged me from the room, I saw a message written, in the unmistakable handwriting of a teenage girl, which the administrator had signed. With my dad's gun, I guess of course I know where he keeps IT. Chloe's face, twisted in a cruel smirk, was the last thing I saw before all went black. October 15, 2009. Chloe Cannon and her friends had less than 24 hours to live. Of course, they didn't know that then. Nobody did. It was just a regular day in our regular town. The school had been out for half an hour, and I was on my way home. Who was right in front of me? You guessed it, boys and girls, Finn Carlton. I walked a few dozen paces behind him, my feet crunching the leaves on the sidewalk, my breath barely visible in the brisk autumn air. I stared at the green trim on his black backpack. God, it was a good-looking backpack. His head hung and his shoulders were slumped. That was odd. I mean, the kid never had great posture, but on this day he looked like his books weighed 100 pounds. He was sniffling a lot, too. I can't be sure, but I think he was crying. I didn't care much about that, though. Finn Carlton's problems were none of my concern, at least, that's what I thought at the time. No, most of my thoughts were on my mother. She didn't have work that day, and it usually meant she had a damn fine meal waiting for the family at home. And I know you all think your mothers can cook a damn fine meal, but trust me, they wouldn't even compare. Anyway, Finn had barely even crossed my mind until he reached into his pocket. He pulled out a ringing cell, a flip phone. 2009 was a simpler time, and answered it. What do you want? His voice seemed thick, like a guy trying to sound more masculine than he felt. At first, my ears barely even registered the first half of the conversation. No, I can't. I can't ask her. Because, man, I think you already know. Dude, she's with Chris. Yes, my brother Chris. What other effing Chris would I be talking about? My ears perked up a bit. Drama. Just what I needed to take the boredom out of this brutally dull walk. I quickened my stride somewhat, hoping to get a bit closer and catch more of the conversation. I took care to avoid the leaves on the sidewalk, not wanting to draw Finn's attention to my presence. He continued. No, I'm not guessing. I saw them kiss. I don't know, next to the band room. Are you effing high? Of course, it was her. Yeah, you're telling me. I feel like poop. I'm losing my effing mind over here. I didn't know who the girl he mentioned was, but I did know of his brother Chris. He was a year younger than me, and it always struck me as strange that he and Finn were related. While Finn was quiet, scrawny, and a bit morose seeming, Chris was a handsome, upbeat kid who gave off the impression that he was going places in life. Oh yeah, dude, that was the last straw, Finn continued, his voice shaking with rage. You have no effing idea how done I am with this poop. Then he was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again, and his voice sounded different. Lower. Meaner. I'm going to unalive her. Both of them, sure. Why not? My blood instantly turned to ice. I stopped dead in my tracks. Did he just say what I think he just said? Finn laughed, a harsh, excited laugh, then spoke again. With my dad's gun, I guess. Of course I know where he keeps it. My head was reeling. I stood, alone, on the sidewalk, my breath short and my heartbeat quick. I tried to force what I had just heard from my mind. Surely he couldn't be serious. But God, he sounded like he was. He sounded deadly serious. I don't think I've heard the tone of voice from anyone else in my life. Finn had continued walking and was almost out of earshot. He stepped further and further away, and I had no interest in hearing any more of his conversation. I felt sick to my stomach. I was only close enough to hear one final sentence before he trailed off. I don't know, man, tomorrow's as good a day as any. It happened the next day, at lunch. I was in the cafeteria, sitting at the usual table with the usual people, when a pop, muffled but audible, rang through the air. A few seconds passed, then another. By the third pop, the cafeteria was silent. By the sixth, pandemonium had ensued. Students trampled over one another in their flight to the west exit, away from that sound. Teachers tried unsuccessfully to give the mob order. Everyone, myself included, was getting the hell out of there. As I ran with the crowd, my thoughts were on Finn Carlton, who was presently undoing his belt and staring at a pipe on the ceiling of the locked band room. Those pops rang in my head, grisly echoes playing over and over and over, getting louder and louder and louder. This is your fault, is all I can think. This is your fault. Bang. 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 The final knock on my cell door woke me. Perhaps cell is too harsh a word, it was a nice room. They took good care of me. Still, when I climbed out of bed and saw those beautiful words on my calendar, day 90, I dressed with a little pep in my step. I could have left at any time, of course, but the paperwork would have been so complicated. That, and I couldn't think of anything better to do on the outside. So I stayed, for 3 long months, talking to therapists and swallowing pills and sharing my feelings in hilarious group circles with other inmates who were actually crazy. And that's the thing, the one thing I learned from my time on the funny farm, they were crazy. I wasn't. No, Chloe Cannon was real, in life and death, as real as my fingers flying over my keyboard right now, telling you my story. Her secret boyfriend, Christopher Carlton, he's real too. So is Xavier Mayweather, Marianne Ortega, RJ Saldes, and every last pound of Big Zack Trainer. They're all real, more real to me than they ever were alive, even though they're all lying in the frozen December ground with traces of lead still in their heads. They're all real, and they won't leave me alone, and why should they? I'm the reason RJ never got to use those Harry Potter tickets. The newspapers reported tirelessly on the victims after the shooting, and one of the details they really harped on was that RJ was a huge Harry Potter fan and that he bought tickets for the upcoming midnight premiere months in advance. I think J.K. Rowling even sent some nice poop to his family. I didn't catch the movie in theaters, but I got it on Redbox a few months later. I wish I could say I was alone when I watched it, but RJ didn't miss a single frame. I'm the reason that the kiss shared between Chloe Cannon and Chris Carlton, the kiss they meant to hide but that was seen by a jealous brother anyway, was their last. I'm the reason Xavier never broke 5 minutes in the mile, the reason Marianne never learned better English, and the reason Zach never lost all the weight he'd meant to. I'm the reason they're all dead. I got Chloe's final message in an email 2 years ago. Tomorrow is as good a day as any. Chloe smiled. Though I see her every night, she hasn't spoken to me since. There's so much she could say, but I think she's choosing, somehow, some way, to let it remain unsaid. Isn't it better if I fill in the gaps? What's it like to still be alive? How can you live with yourself? You could have saved us. She never says it. None of them ever do. I don't even know if they can. But as they crowd around my bed every night, all 6 of them, I can feel it in their stares. They all want to be alive, and they'll haunt me as long as I draw the breath they crave. I'm not crazy, I'm not hallucinating, I'm not a freak, I'm simply and overwhelmingly consumed by guilt. I have a gun that I keep in the corner of my closet, a gun not unlike the one Finn Carlton stole from his dad's dresser, in a box that you could only find if you're looking for it. I look for it sometimes. I pull it out sometimes, too. And every once in a while, I put a bullet in it, close the chamber, and hold it to my temple with a trembling, sweaty palm. Every time I do, I feel my 6 friends, my 6 tormentors, cheering me on. But I've never pulled the trigger. Not yet. I guess the times just never seemed right, but perhaps there's no sense in putting it off any longer. From where I sit now, I can see the box, just the corner, peeking out from the top of my closet. Taunting me. Daring me. When will I give in? I don't know, man, tomorrow's as good a day as any.